Tonight, how best to engage young people with politics in the UK? Is lowering the voting age to 16 the answer? Welcome to Talk Time. Welcome to the show. For the first time in a part of the UK, 16 and 17-year-olds were able to vote in Scotland's devolution referendum 2 years ago. The result was an unprecedented turnout amongst young people and signs of a lasting surge in interest in the political progress among the age group. But at Westminster, Parliament has recently debated and discounted lowering the voting age at future general elections. Take a look at this short VT Talk Time created regarding the Scottish referendum.
When Scotland went to the polls in September 2014 to vote on devolution, for the first time 16 and 17-year-olds had a voice. The question of devolution clearly energised the electorate in Scotland as the turnout reached a staggering 84.5%, the highest in any UK election since the 1950 general election. But in the UK as a whole, you could be forgiven for thinking that politics almost feels irrelevant to the majority of people. Turnout has struggled to rise above two-thirds of the electorate since New Labour's 1997 landslide, and young people in particular are disengaged with the political process. So disengaged that in 2015, just 43% of eligible 18 to 24-year-olds voted. Compare that to the 75% of 16 and 17-year-olds who voted in Scotland. So what's going wrong, and what's the answer? Would lowering the voting age start to make UK politics feel relevant again to young people? Last month, Parliament overturned a House of Lords amendment allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. The idea is gaining and growing cross-party support. Talk Time has conducted an exclusive survey of 15 to 25-year-olds. The results are revealing. Opinions are very divided, with 51% of respondents saying they think that their 16 to 17-year-old peers should be given the vote.
I do think the voting age should perhaps be lowered to 16, because that's kind of when people start getting more politically interested.
I think it shouldn't be lowered to 16, as in because 16 is about like teenage, around teenage. I think it should more of like turn it to 18 or 21.
I think that not like many younger people, they're not that well informed.
But is this age group ready? And are they well informed enough to make an independent decision on polling day? Our Talk Time survey reveals that 3/4 of respondents say that they don't understand the political system very well. North of the border, the Scottish Parliament's Devolution Committee poll found that nearly 80% of Scottish students watched televised debates in the run-up to the independence referendum, and that 86% did feel well informed about major issues in the campaign. Since the referendum, 1/4 of young Scottish voters have taken part in some sort of political activity or campaigning. Our survey found that 70% of respondents claim to be interested in politics, but would a general election electrify young people in the same way that a Scottish referendum did? How can politics be made to feel constantly relevant to people who were born at the turn of the millennium?
So, it worked in Scotland. Would it work in the rest of the UK? Tonight we hear from two experts in their field who are responsible for teaching young people about politics. Kat Smets is Senior Lecturer in Politics at Royal Holloway University of London, and Andrew Russell, who is Head of Politics at the University of Manchester. So, 3/4 of 15 to 21-year-olds believe that young peers should have the vote. Is it really likely to happen?
Well, firstly, that data seems to contradict your earlier data, which said that from your own poll, where it was 51% versus 49%. So, young people's opinions are very hard to actually gauge accurately, and one of the things that we have to do is to get proper data about all of this. Now, it seems to me that there does seem to be a thirst amongst quite a few young people for more politics, and that those people have to be part of the engagement process. But there is also some hard-to-reach young people who are perhaps harder to reach, literally harder to reach.
Yeah. And do you think it's likely to happen?
Voting for 16 and 17-year-olds,
Yeah.
I think that from the politics side, things are definitely moving in that direction, so that politicians are really trying to, I think this is going to happen at some point, it's going to be implemented.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kat, both Andrew and you lecture in politics at UK universities at the age of 18. When students join your course, do you think they know enough to make informed political decisions?
I think some of my students are very knowledgeable about politics, they're very engaged, they are very informed, but at the same time I also have students who are not knowledgeable, they're not interested, and they're not engaged. So yes, some are, some aren't, but I think that's true for people in other age groups as well.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to say is that Kat and I both teach people who are disproportionately likely to be interested in the things that we teach them about. So they might not be representative of a wider circle. I'm always also very wary of that question about maturity and knowledgeable enough, because there are plenty of 40, 50-year-olds who don't pay enough attention to the way they vote. But I think you need a very good reason to change the enfranchisement rules, so a very good reason to lower the voting age, because once it's lowered, it's very hard to raise again. In fact, it's virtually impossible to raise again. So the question is, would lowering the voting age assist with the low sense of participatory value that young people feel? And that, I think, is much harder for lowering the voting age to actually satisfy.
Yeah, okay. So like we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but we were saying like 50% of 15 to 21-year-olds didn't agree to the voting age being lowered in our survey. And they said it's because like they think that young people are going to be influenced by the media, their parents. So if you were to introduce it into school as like a kind of a subject on its own, politics, how would you be able to teach that without being biased, you know, so that they know which way to go? If we were to lower the voting age, how would we inform them?
I mean, personally, I'd be in favour of compulsory politics teaching from a very early age. But I do know, but you've got to be realistic about this. So if you look at how citizenship has been taught in Britain over the last decade, some very grand claims were made on behalf of that citizenship teaching before it was introduced, and then there was some sort of rowing back because often it's delivered in a way that wasn't anticipated. And one of the biggest tragedies about citizenship education right now is just how many students who have had it don't realise that they've had it. Having a new subject explicitly about politics and explicitly about some political themes, the types of things that turn people on to politics are going to be controversial. Do you want to be the teacher who is held up in the media spotlight for teaching controversial things to 14, 15-year-olds? You know, getting another subject into an already crowded curriculum is a very tricky sell, but I would imagine it would be a necessary but insufficient precondition of lowering the voting age.
Okay. And obviously, what's your opinion on that then? Do you think teaching it from younger ages would help lowering the voting age, help people vote?
I do believe that education plays a role, and I think that if we are going to lower the voting age to 16, where we still catch people that are mostly in school, and now I think it's actually compulsory, we need to think very carefully about what we are going to teach them then. And as Andrew already said, I do think it is a difficult subject to teach. I'd like to see it being taught everywhere. I think just the problem is that not enough thinking goes into, okay, how are we going to deliver this then? And is that actually possible to deliver this?
Yeah, I always find like with that kind of thing, you've always got that edge. Maybe like the teacher will be biased towards a certain party, you know, put their own like personal opinions into it. Yeah.
But part of being politically aware is the fact that you'll be aware that people have their own biases and bring their own kind of views to the classroom, and you can filter some of that out. I mean, you know, some of the best lectures I've ever attended, you kind of disagree with every word, but you understand the kind of intellectual coherence of them. And sometimes you can get engaged by things you disagree with as much as by things that you agree with. Yeah,
but like if you are younger and you don't really know your stance, if someone says something like someone who is an academic, are you going to just believe them and like, do you know what I mean? Is it taking advantage of like vulnerable people a little bit, like political views?
Well, vulnerable people is a very value-laden term. I don't think that 16-year-olds are particularly vulnerable in this regard, but I do think that your question gets to the heart of one of the real. One of the really interesting things about the proposed case to lowering the voting age. 16-year-olds are not really a hard to reach group because we can get at them. And some of the justification for it might be that at 16 they'd be more likely to vote than 18-year-olds because they are easier to get hold of. Now that strikes me as a case for saying that you should give 16-year-olds the vote not because they're independent, but because they are still dependent on other people.
Yeah. Do you agree, or?
Yes, I definitely see Andrew's point of view. I don't think the issue is so much whether 16 and 17-year-olds are capable of casting a vote or informed, etc. Because I think that's certainly true for some of them, but also not true for another part of them. And that again goes for people of all ages.
Yeah. Okay, so Andrew, why do you think the government shied away from lowering the voting age recently?
Well, recently it's been overturned as a suggestion for 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in the European upcoming European referendum. And the specific reason for doing that was they said to do with finance, that they couldn't afford to alter the register in time. But much more politically, you know why. One of the real dangers with this stuff is that lots of the people who are in favour of lowering the voting age do so because of a perceived partisan advantage. And I think it'd be foolish to pretend otherwise. If you look back to the Crossman diaries of the 1960s and 70s, when the Harold Wilson government reduced the voting age from 21 to 18 in 1969, the Labour cabinet talked then about the electoral advantage they would have from having young people vote for the first time. But it's also true that some people oppose it for partisan reasons as well. Personally, I think that the case for lowering the voting age is not made because I think there are lots of protective rights of young people that have been set recently at 18. So, for instance, in England now, you can't leave school until the age of 18, or if you get a job, you've got to have some education, formal education qualifications allied to that. Lots of things that you used to be able to do, you can no longer do until 18 now. So you can't get a tattoo, you can't go to a tanning booth. You can't buy cigarettes until the age of 18. You used to be able to do that at a younger age. 18 has become the de facto age of adulthood. And then there are also responsibilities for, if you're homeless at 16 or 17, the government have a responsibility to rehouse you. I think all of those protective rights might come under threat if the voting age is lowered.
Okay, and our Talk Time survey has revealed how few young people feel they have a political voice. They don't feel like they're being heard. So couldn't the government's refusal to consider lowering the voting age further annihilate them?
Difficult one. I do think that there is a problem in the sense that a lot of young people feel like the political style is outdated. They don't, when they look at question time in Parliament, there's a lot of middle-aged, mostly men, and I can see that that young people don't feel that this necessarily fits their style and their ways of doing things. Is this going to further disengage young people? I don't know, because I actually don't know if there's that much support from young people themselves to lower the voting age to 16.
Okay. And briefly, what's your opinion on it?
I think the chance of you feeling alienated because 16-year-olds aren't getting the vote are quite remote, because I think even if you are alienated, you're likely to still be engaged in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
If you're alienated, it's probably already too late.
Yep. Okay. So, thank you very much, guys, and excellent. That's all we've got time for. Thank you, Kat Smets and Andrew Russell, and don't forget we can continue the discussion using the hashtag TalkTime. Next week, we ask whether Trident really is the answer to keeping Britain safe in an unpredictable world. Until then, good night.